Welcome to this edition of the 700 Club. There's one cry now in Washington by the Democrats. Let's not worry about America. Let's get Trump. We hate Trump. We're going to destroy Trump. But what does it do to America? We don't care what it does to America. We're going to destroy Trump. And what they're doing now, they're going to battle with the Justice Department, and they're voting to subpoena the Mueller report, unredacted. But look what Jerry Nadler had to say. We'll show you that later on about what he said about the Starr report. Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson has that report. Abigail.
Even with the Attorney General preparing a redacted version of the Mueller report for Congress, a House panel voted to subpoena the full report on Russian interference in the 2016 election.
I frankly believe that we are being both fair and balanced.
Democrats in the House made it official and partisan.
This committee has the right and the responsibility to see the full contents of this report.
Voting 24-17 along party lines to authorize subpoenas, but waiting before firing them off. Attorney General William Barr has already promised to get them a version scrubbed of classified material, secret grand jury testimony, and anything related to ongoing investigations or the personal privacy of third parties.
The department is wrong to try to withhold that information.
But that's not enough for the House Judiciary Chairman.
The Constitution charges Congress with holding the president accountable for alleged official misconduct. That job requires us to evaluate the evidence for ourselves, not the Attorney General's summary, not a substantially redacted synopsis, but the full report.
Representative Jerry Nadler compared Mueller's report to the release of the Starr report into President Clinton.
Boxes of such information produced by Ken Starr.
And the Nixon impeachment process.
Just some of the grand jury material.
Georgia Republican Doug Collins called those props apples and oranges.
Starr, Mueller. It just doesn't work.
They're sore losers.
The White House maintains the report's release is up to the Attorney General.
Anything that's given to them will never be good enough.
On Faith Nation, Julia Manchester, a reporter with The Hill, said Democrats need to proceed with caution.
I think a lot of Democrats are trying to save face in all of this.
And CBN News chief political analyst David Brody added,
well, that's a bit irresponsible to have an unredacted report, whatever you think if you're a Republican or a Democrat.
This week's authorizations include subpoenas for former Trump administration officials Reince Priebus, Steve Bannon, Hope Hicks, Donald McGahn, and Annie Donaldson. As to whether the Attorney General has authority over what to release and what to keep private, that decision will likely be made in the nation's courts. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Nadler took a totally different position in 1998, when he strictly opposed releasing the entire report of Ken Starr on Democratic President Bill Clinton. Look at what he said then.
Mr. Starr, in his transmittal letter to the Speaker and the Minority Leader, made it clear that much of this material is Federal Rule 6E material, that is material that by law, unless contravened by vote of the House, must be kept secret. It's grand jury material. It represents statements which may or may not be true by various witnesses, salacious material, all kinds of material that it would be unfair to release.
This is an episode of hypocrisy, blatant hypocrisy. The Democrats, I mean, there was a time the Democratic Party really cared about America. They wanted to help workers. They wanted to make this country prosperous. They wanted to stand up to our foreign enemies, and they wanted to work together in harmony with their Republican friends on the Hill and throughout Washington. No longer. It is so partisan and so toxic, it makes you sick. But that kind of hypocrisy is the kind of thing we're looking for, and there's no way under heaven that a good attorney general is going to release grand jury testimony. That's against the law. He's not going to give away intelligence secrets. That's against the law. He's not going to do something that is blatantly contravenes his own sworn statement of upholding the law. And the Democrats are just crazy if they allow this to happen, and the Republicans will not submit to it. Well, in other news, the Democrats are fighting even more things with the president. John Jessup has more on that.
That is right, Pat. Another battle is brewing, this one over President Trump's tax returns. Ways and Means Committee Chairman Richard Neal asked the IRS to turn over the president's personal and business returns from 2013 to 2018. He says they're needed to shed light on potential conflicts of interest. President Trump says he can't release the returns because he's being audited.
But until such time as I'm not under audit, I would not be inclined to do that. Thank you.
Texas Congressman Kevin Brady, the senior Republican on Ways and Means, called the move an abuse of the committee's authority. Former Vice President Joe Biden is addressing multiple claims of inappropriate contact with women. In a video he posted on Twitter, the potential 2020 presidential candidate defended his past behaviors, but noted social norms are changing.
I'll be much more mindful. That's my responsibility, and I'll meet it. But I'll always believe governing, quite frankly, life for that matter, is about connecting with people. That won't change, but I will be more mindful and respectful of people's personal space.
Biden has been polling at the head of the pack of Democratic presidential hopefuls, though he has yet to officially announce his 2020 campaign. Well, the political scandals that rocked Virginia politics are back in the spotlight. The Commonwealth's top 2 elected officials are dealing with more attention from potentially career-ending bombshells. CBN senior correspondent Eric Phillips brings us the latest from Richmond.
A pro-life rally on the Capitol steps, followed by a march as Virginia lawmakers headed for the final day of the session known as Veto Day. A growing coalition of Virginians looking to veto Governor Northam's gubernatorial career.
Virginia can and must do better. And this is why we remain, along with the SCLC and the NAACP, to call for Governor Northam to resign.
The coalition, led by the Douglas Leadership Institute, says controversy over a blackface photo on Northam's college yearbook page and what they call his support of infanticide are reasons he's not fit to be governor. Alveda King, niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., joined in the chorus.
There's one way that the governor really can stay in the position of governor with integrity. Reverse that terrible covenant with death.
Of course, Northam, whose nickname was Coon Man, knew exactly what he was doing in his yearbook page.
House Republicans are calling the governor out, saying he needs to keep his promises.
What happened to the investigation he promised? What happened to the private investigator he was going to hire? What happened to the facial recognition software he was going to employ to get to the bottom of this photograph?
The Commonwealth's second in command also embroiled in renewed controversy.
He did things that you shouldn't do to someone without their permission.
The 2 women who've accused Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax of sexual assault spoke out this week for the first time on TV. Virginia House Republicans are calling for a public hearing to delve into the allegations.
This should all be sorted out very publicly, and we hope that our colleagues will join us in that effort.
But House Democrats have refused, and without bipartisan support, the alleged victims say they won't testify. In all likelihood, the chances of Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax facing a public hearing here at the state capitol, slim to none. Whether Governor Ralph Northam will respond to being called out by House Republicans is yet to be seen. In Richmond, Virginia, Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Thanks, Eric. Pat, back to you.
You know, the president has said Virginia is in play. Virginia has been an extremely conservative state for years and years and years, and all of a sudden, because of Northern Virginia, there's such a flood of federal money that has come into that part of the state that the state has turned Democratic and has elected a number of people. The House of Delegates is still in the hands of Republicans, but it's a very tenuous majority that they have now. And the president has said Virginia is now in place. So it just may be that this state will go back to being a more conservative than it has been. But these scandals at the top of the ticket are just outrageous. The Attorney General lied about what he was going to do. He said, I'm going to defend the Defense of Marriage Act. I will support it. And then he turned against it, exactly contrary to what he promised. Northern has said some shocking things about infanticide. That is as if when after a botched abortion, as a baby is born alive, it'd be possible to murder it. That was his statement. And now the lieutenant governor seems to be clearly, well, he's accused by 2 people of sexual assault, and both seem quite credible. And he said, well, I took a lie detector test. I don't think that means a whole lot. But in any event, I'm a Virginian. We live in Virginia. This program comes out of Virginia, and we're ashamed of having leaders like this in power in our state, and I think it's time to do something about it. Well, Christian and conservative leaders are calling on tech companies to do something, and John has more about that.
That's right, Pat. They're calling on tech companies to stop using the Southern Poverty Law Center as a resource because of the SPLC's practice of labeling them hate groups. This as the organization itself is also dealing with internal turmoil and calls for an IRS investigation. CBN's Jenna Browder has the story.
More than 25 conservative leaders say enough is enough and have signed a letter to the CEOs of Facebook, Twitter, Google, and Amazon, urging them to end any working partnerships with the Southern Poverty Law Center.
This is a time of decision for big tech and big media. Are you going to continue to embrace the Southern Poverty Law Center as your standard of morality, even though they've been fully exposed as an organization rife with bigotry and racism?
The Family Research Council, led by Tony Perkins, is just one group targeted by the SPLC and listed as a hate group for its biblical beliefs and defense of traditional marriage. Others, like the Alliance Defending Freedom, have also been put on the SPLC's hate map. The letter reads in part, "It is now clear that the SPLC has proven to be a hate-filled, anti-Christian, anti-conservative organization, and nothing more than a weapon of the radical left, whose goal is to bully people into compliance with their ideology. Fail to comply with their demands, and you will be labeled as a hate group or an extremist." And this may be just the beginning of the SPLC's worries. Senator Tom Cotton is calling on the IRS to investigate the organization.
They've really become kind of a hate group themselves. They have this so-called hate map, and they use it to stigmatize their political opponents. You know, respectable center-right organizations.
He wants its tax-exempt status reviewed.
Serial, repeated defamation against your political opponents is not a tax-exempt purpose.
The SPLC has a reported $500 million in assets, with a good chunk of that in offshore accounts.
So the Southern Poverty Law Center has over $500 million. About a quarter of that, Tucker, is parked in overseas accounts, as best we can tell. I don't know many charitable advisors say it's best practice to send your endowment to overseas accounts in the Caribbean. That's one reason why Charity Watch gives them an F rating.
This all comes amid serious allegations of sexual and racist discrimination within the SPLC. Co-founder Morris Dees has been forced out, and President Richard Cohen has also stepped down. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thanks, Jenna. Pat, back to you.
Just think, it sounds so good, the Southern Poverty Law Center. Nothing but a front for the left. And yes, I agree with Senator Cotton. It's time to jerk their tax-exempt status and to park a lot of money. Well, there's nothing wrong with having an overseas account, but I mean, to put that kind of money in it, they're hardly, well, they just need to say goodbye to that. Well, there's something that is in crisis mode I've been talking about before. Now we understand this. In addition, they don't have enough power. The power grid is in state of collapse. The medical hospital area is in collapse. And now I'm told that there is a crisis in relation to communicable diseases where they didn't have any of them or hardly a few cases. Now there's an epidemic of things like measles in Venezuela. So John has more, and I am so concerned, and I think you should be, about the tragedy unfolding at our southern border because of socialism. John?
Pat, Venezuela's failing healthcare system has led to a surge in preventable diseases like measles and diphtheria. A report by Human Rights Watch and Johns Hopkins surveyed refugees in Colombia and Brazil, including healthcare professionals. It estimates more than 9,300 cases of measles reported in Venezuela since June 2017, up from only one recorded case between 2008 and 2015. And 2,500 suspected cases of diphtheria since July 2016. Venezuelan strongman Nicolas Maduro has blocked food and medical supplies at the border. And Pat, the report urges the UN to take the lead in getting aid into the country.
I tell you, I know it's nice to give aid, to get aid in food and medicine and so forth, which of course they urgently need. But what they need is to that man to be taken out. It needs military force. Now we're talking about Russians. They have at least 600 Russian soldiers in that country in violation of the Monroe Doctrine. And it's not enough to just say, well, I think we ought to protest. It's time for action. And the OAS, the Organization of American States, needs to come together. And it may be it's got to have the Americans to lead it. But I could see, we have very effective drones. We have what are called Hellfire missiles that can be fired from drones. And I believe it's time to give Mr. Maduro a little taste of what he's been doing to the opposition. But right now, the duly elected president has lost his exemption. And there's a very real possibility that they will either kidnap him or execute him while all this talk is going on. And then Maduro will have a free hand. Something has got to be done. This is a cancer at our southern border that should not be allowed to continue. And it's time, frankly, for force. When you've got a thug holding people captive, sooner or later, the police have got to come in and take that man out. And it's overdue in the case of Venezuela.